Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Agency Side Podcast. I'm your host, Justin Levinson. Today's guest is Olita Mills, president of LaForce. Olita joined the agency expecting it to be a stepping stone. Now, 20 years later, she's leading it. When her daughter's preschool recently held a career day featuring several moms who are all doctors, her 4-year-old proudly stood up and announced, "My mom's not a doctor. She's a president." In this episode, Olita shares the unexpected journey behind that title, how she helped LaForce through growth and change, why human connection still matters in an increasingly automated industry. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. This one is going to be fun. Hey, Olita, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm interested in your story here. I would love to get right into hearing about your origin story, how you got into this industry.
That is wonderful. I always say that I feel that my trajectory is unique in that I have spent the majority of my career here at LaForce. But even to go back to when I was starting post-college, I always had a passion for media. I had this idea that at first I wanted to be a lawyer. So I did this whole stint in working at a law firm and I applied to law school. And then I decided that perhaps another 3-4 years of school was not necessarily going to be for me. And thank God I had these internships. I had all these media internships in advertising and in other aspects. And so I was able to use that to land my first job, which was at a boutique agency that actually doesn't even exist today, but it was a focused in home furnishings, interior design, architecture. And it was a category that I didn't have a lot of experience in, but I grew to love. And I continue to have a really strong passion for home and design and even that media and that category of media. And when I spent about 4 years working with many brands and interior designers and commercial real estate, and that actually led me to wanting to break beyond that category and do something different. So I was looking for bigger agencies. And at the time, it was very different in terms of job search. I don't even think LinkedIn really existed, believe it or not. It was very much going on websites and looking. And there was a job for LaForce at the time. It was a different agency then, but they were looking for a mid-level executive for their home design team. So it was sort of perfect. And I ended up taking that job and thinking that I was never going to be here for more than a few years. It was definitely a stepping stone to understand what bigger agencies were doing. And when I say big, this agency was very much getting started, but was bigger than the agency that I was at before, and got great opportunity. And I can go on and on and on about the opportunity probably in other questions, but fast forward 20 years, I'm still here.
Amazing.
And there's a lot of reasons why that is the case, but it's very unique in that I have chosen to spend the majority of my career here, but it was definitely by accident. It wasn't planned.
Do you remember your interview?
I do.
Yeah.
I actually am still very much in touch with the young lady who interviewed and hired me. She now has gone off to do incredible things in corporate communications and comms. But I just remember them asking me about my experience. I remember asking about editors that I worked with and how I would pitch certain things in media. And I think they were impressed. At least they told me after that I just knew every home editor. And it was a very small category. And that was part of what, agencies would, they want to know that you know everyone and that you're able to get stories for the brand. So, and I think I did a writing test and all that fun stuff to get the job. But it was a very niche category. And I think they were excited that they found someone that sort of understood it.
Yeah, very cool. So you had kind of a traditional accounts story from going to accounts supervisor, director, VP, SVP, president. Maybe you could tell us what was like. I guess what was there anything special that you feel you brought to the table that kept giving you those promotions and bringing you up to such a high level?
Yes. There were a few things, and I don't know if it was necessarily about me, but I think it was also about the company that I was in and the leaders of the company. So there's a few factors in my trajectory. One is that I entered LaForce at a time where the agency was rapidly growing. It was rapidly changing. I had no knowledge at the time of what I wanted. I just think that that's like but what I did feel really excited about was I was getting a lot of opportunity. And I knew I was getting more than if I was at this big corporate company that had a lot of red tape. And, and now I understand that I was at a supervisor level going to new business meetings and with the founder and, sitting, and I don't know how well I was doing in those meetings, but I certainly was a part of them and was someone that would then go back. And if we were working on the brand, I would be a part of getting that off the ground. And that was simply because we weren't that big. We
Yeah.
were probably a quarter of the size or half the size, I would say, of what we are now, and very much in demand. We're founded, and our current CEO is James LaForce, and he's incredible. And he definitely played a major role in growing the company. And I think I, in a way, benefited from brands coming in and having, being able to work on things simply because we were growing and we were hiring, but sometimes we weren't hiring at the pace of the growth.
Yeah.
So that also got me into other categories because there were brands and consumer packaged good brands and the ways in which we were expanding where we would have the opportunity to work on the business. And even though I didn't have that deep category experience, I was willing to learn it. And I had this understanding of media. So I would be staffed on these brands. And it really sort of grew my experience, even though there was a learning curve there. So I think a piece of that step was having the opportunity to work at a company that was growing and being willing, I think if I give it to myself in a way, being willing to get my hands dirty in everything.
Yeah.
And I loved that. I didn't, yes, I was overwhelmed and there was definitely moments of what is going on here, but I realized that I probably wouldn't get that kind of opportunity just anywhere.
Yeah.
And it really did benefit me in my career.
Yeah. That's amazing that the company is growing and you get such an opportunity to get your hands on all these things where you may not have been as senior at that time as other folks in the room and getting that exposure. That's really fascinating. Just to give our listeners some background, if they might not know LaForce, maybe you can just tell us a little bit about what you guys do in the market and what makes you guys unique.
Exactly. LaForce is a New York-based full service consumer marketing agency. We specialize in public relations, digital marketing, paid. And we always say that we service big brands and small brands with big dreams. So we like that we are mid-size. We sit at this sweet spot of about 100, 120 employees. And we are in every single lifestyle category. So our roots are in fashion, and the agency grew rapidly in fashion over the last 30 years, but we have expanded in the last decade or so into almost every category. So we are servicing brands in wine and spirits, in retail, food and beverage, consumer packaged goods, everything from brands like Amazon to Motorola in consumer tech. A lot of what we do we're understanding, what the brand voice needs to be, what the objective is, what the results need to, starting with results that are coming out of the program. And we're creating ideas that we hope will break through in culture and media and in the landscape across the board. So we have a range of clients, and we always say that we see ourselves as the consumer. So that's a lot of the lens in terms of how we bring things in. And what I get excited about is that we are private and we do sort of put this lens on the brands that we work with, that we try to curate our roster in a way that we are just excited about every single client that is at LaForce. And it is 100% true. Like, we love all of our clients and get excited when new ones come in.
That's amazing. What is your specific role as president? What is your day to day like at these days?
Thanks for tuning in, folks. This episode is brought to you by Coming Up Creative, a relationship-first boutique creative recruitment agency. We disrupt the creative ecosystem by running sophisticated, multi-channel campaigns with custom video and voice outreach that actually gets responses. We actively market the agencies and brands we represent to help them stand out to today's industry's top talent, all backed by real human connection and AI-powered targeting. If you're ready for a modern recruitment approach, visit www.comingupllc.com and get started today.
Yeah, my day to day has changed, and especially since I, have had a trajectory here. In the last 5 years, I've been president of the agency. We've grown significantly, and I'm incredibly proud of that. But my day to day spans different buckets. So I always say, first is agency, and under agency, I have personnel, and so I have a wonderful operations team, an HR team, and our finance team, but ultimately I am partnering with them to understand what is our employee retention, happiness, growth. Do we need to hire? What are we doing for our employees from an agency and company standpoint to make sure that they love working here? This team does a lot of creative work around just helping that, making sure that our culture is really top notch. We also have a chief joy officer who spreads joy and sprinkles joy all throughout the agency, which is really fun. And so, personnel can span a lot of different things, but that would be like a bucket for me. I would say a second one would be client. And so similarly to our people and our talent, our clients are everything. So I spend a lot of time making sure that across the board at a very high level that our clients are happy and that they are getting service on the level that they expect. I tend to go to the problems, it's like that's what happens. But I really do try to find and make sure that I have times because, I forget the phrase like the squeaky wheel always wins. Like it is a little bit of like you want to go to the ones that are happy and making sure that they continue to get the service and the thinking and all, that proactivity that we really try to nurture here consistently so that they remain that way. And so there's all sorts of things in that client bucket too. If there's a fire that needs to be put out, I will do it. I also feel like I benefit from being at every level. So I have a really good knowledge of the media landscape and, so I try to bring ideas to the team. So if they're, if they have to pitch a big story, I may say like, what about this angle? You guys take it and run with it. So I'm always trying to get my hands in the brand and the clients in a way that at a high level that's enhancing the teams here.
Yep.
And then I would say the third bucket, which spans a lot, is new business, which, as you know, agencies, are constantly pitching new and looking at new. And I think at LaForce, we are very busy in terms of always sort of talking to new brands, which excites us and very exciting. So a lot of my time goes there in terms of not only attracting that clientele, but the ones that are coming in, helping to build the programs that hopefully they'll want to keep working with us and keep coming back, or at least referring us to their friends and others. So I
Love
always
it.
think of it in those three buckets. And then in those buckets, there's just so much that's in there.
Yeah. Interested in a little bit and to double click on the the retaining part and the chief joy officer. Is that what the title was? You said chief joy.
Yes. Yes.
I've been in the recruiting business for over 10 years and I've never placed a chief joy officer, but I've got to meet this one because that sounds like a really, what is the key of to that person's role?
So
What is that like?
it's a C-suite. So so his name is Stephen Henderson. He is the husband of James, but he has been named Chief Joy Officer for almost as long, for at least a decade. And his job is to understand the little things about how we work. So anything from around holidays, if it's, let's say it's like Valentine's Day, like creating Valentine's Day cards for employees, or having for Halloween, we did like pumpkin carving one year. So the fun activities, like he'll sort of come up with these ideas. But I think what he does so well is the little things. So I'll give you an example. We had an employee once when they first started. We have an internal newsletter that goes out and we spotlight employees each month when the newsletter goes out. And it's really just for all of us to know what's going on in the agency. Stephen writes the spotlight. He's a journalist and by heart. And he heard that one employee, when he was interviewing, had never just moved to New York and never had been to a Broadway show. Never been to a Broadway show. And when he heard that, 2 days later, there were 2 tickets to a Broadway show on this employee's desk. Saying like, you're in New York now, enjoy the city. You need to go, bring a friend and go ahead. So little things like that, I think that personal touch as well. And
Yeah.
he's always listening for those things. I mean, there's times where, an employee volunteers for a charity and is really passionate about it. And all of a sudden a modest donation is made in their name. So, it's just these little touches that I hope that also our employees do remember and say about us. But those unique things make a really big difference in how people, feel about LaForce and the differences in LaForce. So that's his role. Bring
Yeah.
joy, spread joy.
Yeah, that is really incredible. I love that. Broadway tickets.
Isn't that great? I just
That's
think
so
it's so
nice.
humble.
It
Exactly.
is. And those things make a big difference, especially when everybody's working hard and to know you're being recognized. That's really brilliant way to retain people. I love it.
Great. Great.
What is what's your favorite part of your gig?
I love media and I love brands. And I realize that I'm very passionate about where the landscape is going now, but also like how ideas and campaigns and creativity around brand strategy. I love it I love all brands that we work with because now I'm completely across category and feel very comfortable working in any sort of space. However, some of my favorite things are when we're taking something that seems like it doesn't need a publicist and we're coming up with the ideas that gives it, more. So we've had, potato chip brands in the past where we've gotten them in fashion shows or in the New York Times. We recently had a really great program with Popeyes, which is our client, where we created a partnership with Surf Lodge. And through our outreach and pitching, we're able to get a big New York Times story. So I think when we're able to do things like that, and when I'm able to be a part of it, of taking something that is so simple and doesn't, anyone would kind of say, well, that's not going to get there. And then we get it there.
Yeah.
That's the favorite part of my job, is coming up with those challenges and those ideas so that every brand is sort of seen and can break through.
I
So
love that. My favorite part in agency world is winning new business. I love that. That's really exciting to me. And I had read that maybe this was, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe this was before you were president, you had grown the brand practice by 60% over 2 years. How did you do that?
Oh, that's so research. Before when I became president 5 years ago, it was also during the pandemic. It was
Oh yeah,
around the COVID timeframe where businesses and even our business, we were very cautious about, the landscape at the time. There was a lot of things going on with brands. And in my promotion, and I sort of credit James, he empowered me to look at the agency and look at it differently. And we know we couldn't predict the future, but we did see it as an opportunity to figure out what is our structure? Do we need to make changes? How are we showing up so that we are on the path to growth over the next 5 years or so? And so I had a lot of ideas and no experience in implementing them. But of course, true James LaForce is like, go for it, like do it. So part of it was, we did a bit of restructuring internally and how we were showing up for new business. We were showing up differently. We were reaching across agency. We were really making sure, and these are just little things that aren't necessarily secrets, but like
yeah,
making sure that the people that were going to be a part of the brand were very much on the front lines of the pitch. I think that clients do sort of feel a little deceived when there's a bait and switch on that business team. But from our end, it really allowed the people that were working on the pitch and the deck and all the ideation associated with it, and we brought in other resources within agency, that they really got to know the brand. They really got to love the brand. So like when they were showing up for things, they had a lot of knowledge. They developed the plan so they could talk through the ideas as if they did it themselves. I think, and I feel there was a level of authenticity where, quite honestly, we just started, more people were more willing, I guess, to work with us with some changes that we made structurally. I also had some senior leadership that were sort of embedded in teams and doing a really great job. And I brought them more across agency so that they could have more impact on the teams in our agency. So, I thought we were doing a great job, but sometimes, you tend with a team structure to get one team has, certain ideas, and how do you get that to infiltrate the agency to up level everyone? And so it was some structural changes that allowed some really good key people that are still with me today to make a bigger impact across the board. And I think all of it, I don't know if it, what exactly the math, what was the result of business, but that's
Yeah.
sort of what I felt was the biggest difference in the
Yeah.
before and the after. And then, there's things that I just don't take credit for, which is the reputation of the agency and everything that James has built. I think he just has this incredible reputation that I don't deny and is a real reason why we are so successful in what we do as well.
I love that. You've had some impressive accolades. You were PR, or actually, well, the agency was PR's best place to work in 21, 22. You were recognized in PR news for top women. I didn't read this. I didn't write this very well, but for change maker. There it is. So yeah, obviously you've had a lot to do with the success of the agency. How did you feel getting these awards? That must have been pretty exciting.
It was shocking and exciting at the same time. We had, here at LaForce, we didn't really have a lot of marketing of ourselves in place. It was, sort of, and we're still a little like that. Like we don't do a ton of it. We're like, we promote our clients, we don't promote ourselves. And so we focus a lot of our energy on the brands that we work with. But there are some awards and things that came along that we just like, you know what, we should just throw our hat in the ring. Like we think that we're doing X well. We do think we're a great place to work. Like we
Yeah.
have, our chief joy officer or, all these little perks that we do that we don't really talk about. And so, we thought that was a really good thing to fill out. And guess what? We got it. And we got it 2 years in a row, which is great. In terms of my personal awards, it was something that, my team said, maybe we put you fourth and see. And I'm like, I'm sure it's very competitive. And so it's always an honor to feel like the industry is recognizing you
Yeah.
in any way. And especially with, trades like PR News and PR Week and PR Net, they're all sort of read by everyone. And so it feels like what you're doing is sort of the word is getting out. But, sometimes it also just comes back to making sure you're doing the work and getting it done. But it's definitely a great thing, and I'm super proud of it. And I'm grateful that LaForce as an agency decided to put me out there in that way.
I love it. I kind of want to bounce to another topic that we're always interested in. I know that I'm sure PR has changed a lot since you first got into the industry. I would curious to know what you've seen as the biggest changes and also how AI has affected the industry.
I was going to say AI. It's funny because as I look back at my trajectory, I mean, there's a lot of change. So and we joke about this, and anyone who's been in the industry for over, I guess you could say like 15 years, whatever, remembers the time of Bacon's books and, all these things, like everything with the way that I started, it prepared me in some respects, because I still think relationships are important. I think being able to understand media and how they write and what they're going to cover, all these basics are still there and still very important, but how we do things have changed. And so a lot of things have gotten more automated. I will say one of the biggest changes before AI, and I'll get to AI, in my career was the whole, remember bloggers and when all of that started, and then it became influencers and creators and like all these things. But I remember being on all these calls with clients, like, what are you all doing in the blogger landscape? And like how it was like and that was a level of education for everyone. Like, and then the bloggers became influencers and, all these different things, obviously with social media, TikTok, all that stuff created so much change. And when I think about that, where we are now just with social media and where I was, even when I think of our, young employees, a lot of the things I say to them is like, yeah, we did monitoring all stuff, but there wasn't that much to monitor. Like, now it's so the landscape is so broad, the job has changed so much, and you do need these databases and AI and all these things to help make it more efficient and time consuming, and less time consuming.
Yeah.
But fast forward to AI, I mean, I think that's, this is just a complete game changer. And we don't know truly what it's going to become. I know that even in the last year, it has changed significantly in terms of implementation. Whereas a few years ago, we were, starting to talk about it or starting, now it's like, AI on every computer. We're using it for all of our reporting and our monitoring. A lot of our new business briefs and pitches are asking like, how are you incorporating AI and what are the services that the agency is offering? And so it has changed it from an output, but also from our efficiency standpoint and how we work internally. And so we're very careful with it. Like we do use it and we think it's incredibly important, but I continue to say, and I continue to feel that it's still not going to replace the need for human connection and for the ability to sit in a room and have a conversation with someone and for them to, respond to you and say, I want to work with you, or I really like the team. Like, I think that from an efficiency standpoint, it is going to help us tremendously. From an inspiration standpoint, it's helping us tremendously. But there are going to be certain try to do things that I don't think are going to change.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's almost coming back full circle with relationships and all that authenticity. Like in the hiring or in the recruitment business, everything is so like automated with like multi-channel campaigns and just using sort of like AI variables that are so like they're so generic and clearly AI. That now like picking up a phone like the old school way is a way to get a hold of people now. So like picking the phone because people are so they're not expecting it, and so or like personal video. Like reaching out to somebody with a personal video that's not just a message. That's not AI generated video, but reaching out to somebody and expressing why you're personally interested in that person and why they would be a fit for a role or why you're interested in getting to know them. So yeah, I think the relationships thing is always going to prevail, but it's cool that it's making things more efficient and the stuff that we obviously don't want to do.
Exactly. And I still think like the battle is that editor lens. Like you have to know, if you're using it, say you're using it to like refine emails or something, I don't even know what it is, but you still need to know the job. Like you need to understand what you're trying to say. You need to understand how to communicate. You need to understand how to edit. So I think, some of it is you just don't want to lose the education and the foundation that has gotten us to this point. And even to your point with talent, like we have a rule here, like we will not hire people right off video. Like we will not. Like somehow you need to come into this office and you need to have an interview or we'll meet you for a breakfast or whatever it is. And I do think, COVID changed that in terms of, there obviously during the pandemic, there was a lot of hiring or whatever would happen just by not meeting someone face to face. But it just that human interaction, that human touch, the in person, I personally am a very big believer of. I know James is, and I just don't think that is going to. I don't think it should be replaced. Like I really don't, and I hope that it's not. I still write thank you notes, and I hand. Yeah.
I love that. What do you look for when you're hiring people? What kind of qualities?
Gosh, so I think it is very important to look for qualities that are different than yourself. I really try to encourage, especially when we get to teens, as we're hiring for a role, is we start with what don't we have? Like, what are we lacking here? What is the biggest thing? Like, if say it's a team or a talent and we have really good media strategists or we have really good writers, I don't know, whatever the qualities are, it's not that we would look someone that doesn't have that, but what are we missing? And how are we sort of complementing the efforts that we have here? So sometimes I will rank qualities of like, what is the most important thing that I need right now that I'm missing and why I'm hiring? Is it personality? Is it strategy? And it doesn't mean that that person won't have all of these other things, but I'm going into an interview sort of understanding that ranking and looking for those things because I know that is something that's going to make us better.
Yeah.
So I always think if I'm hiring everyone like me, I'm not doing a great job. Like I want people that are going to challenge me. I don't want yes people, like everyone just saying yes, 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 yes. Like I think that it's important to have people around you that are really kind of challenging you in respectful ways and that I'm listening to them. So I'm looking for that in what I'm hearing. Yeah.
Do you guys give writing tests still?
We do. You know what? We switch them here and there because we found that the writing test didn't always reflect the work that we were doing. So
Yeah.
sometimes we will take an old assignment, from a client or, and put it into, it could still be a version of the writing test, but it'll be like a media strategy or, if it's a very senior level person, it will be like a new business, like how would you respond to this if you were pitching this business? What are some ideas you would come up with? We try very hard to test in situations that we are in versus these sort of things that we wish we would have and that we're never going to use. And that because we found that we would, some people interview really well. And then
Yeah.
when you're in that day-to-day work, it's like that didn't really work out that well. So
Yeah.
we try to put them in our environment. And if that environment doesn't work for them, like, it's like, it's like, okay, well, we get it. Like this is probably isn't the best place for you.
Yep. Yep. That makes sense. I guess the last part of the interview or podcast, not really interview, but what do you like to do outside of work? What's your jam out there?
Jam. Well, if you asked me this 4 years ago or 5 years ago, I would say I travel and I go, do all these different things. And in the last 4 years, I had my daughter, and I think I share this very openly that I'm what's called a choice mom. So I had her on my own without a husband or a partner. And so that just limits a lot of my life in general in the best possible way. She is 4 now. And so I will say that the majority of my time outside of being at work is with her. And so whatever we're doing, and we do travel, we do things. It may be to like Peppa Pig or something like that, but
Nice.
we definitely try to do a lot of things. We live in the city in Manhattan, so there's this luxury of being here in New York City and having access to so many great things to do. But she is my priority and becomes all of my free time from 5 a.m. in the morning till 8 o'clock at night. Like with those windows that I'm home, and then of course weekends and vacations and all that fun stuff.
Does she understand like what you do for a job and all that jazz?
She does. I have a funny story about her. So she doesn't really understand what I do, but she knows I work because she's always saying like, you're going to work, which I think is like good
Yeah.
and bad. But
Yeah.
funny thing happened at her school. She's at preschool, and a lot of the moms, which I love, are doctors. Like we're kind of right by the hospital. So there's a bunch of moms that are doctors. And so the preschool did doctor day, and all these moms, one was a surgeon, one was a OB and all this stuff. They came and they talked to the kids and they talked about being doctors. And I was like, this is the greatest thing. I love that they're doing this. And apparently my daughter stood up in the whole thing because they told me this after and said, my mom's not a doctor. She's a president, like she's like so proud of that. And they were like, they all told me that. So like, I think
That's awesome.
knows like, what I do,
Yeah.
but she knows that I, work. She knows I work. I think that's the biggest thing now, but hopefully as she gets older, she'll be proud of me and be inspired.
Oh yeah. That's I mean, your job is very like for bring your parent into work day. I feel like your job is pretty cool. Like that's a pretty awesome job. So that's pretty cool. What are you a fan of? I'm always interested in music. Are you a music fan?
I am a music fan. I love music. I will say that I may be a little stuck in the 90s and early 2000s, but I'm a big hip hop fan. I'm a big, I don't know, like I keep watching all this footage from like the Jay-Z Yankee Stadium, concert that just happened and wish that I could be there, but of course I wasn't. So anything, 90s hip hop, even that spans to today is probably on my playlist. And then what else? I mean, I like all sorts of music though. I listen to country, I listen to R&B, like all of it. So, but I love music. Love it.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I'm probably kind of stuck in the 90s, early 2000s too. So we're probably of similar vintage on that side of things. But thanks so much for being here today, Olita, and talking to us and offering value, sharing your story. It's really been a wonderful conversation. So thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. This is great. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care. Thanks so much.